We were going to We Are the Majority, and this is a book that's going to be available to you after the meeting if you'd like to purchase it. But we actually have the author here tonight. He's going to share a few words about his book, and we're really honored to have him. His name is Scott Beebe, and he's going to talk about his book, how we are the majority. I mean, we hear about all these groups rising up, and we hear on the news, we almost feel like we're drowning, you know, that we are the minority, but we're not. And reading Scott's book, I was so encouraged. How, wow, we're the majority. We've got to quit being silent, you know, and really voice our opinions and take a stand and not be afraid, because there are a lot of people out there that are standing with us. And especially if we become vocal, they will get the courage to be vocal as well. And I'm sure Scott's going to really cover all of that. Scott's a local author and a technical writer, and I believe that his book has a very important message for us and all members of the Tea Party movement across the nation. Let's give it up for Scott.
Good evening. As Susan said, I'm Scott Beebe, and I'm the author of We Are the Majority. I want to thank Susan and her board members for giving me the opportunity to speak about the book. I'm not going to go through the nuts and bolts of the book. After all, that's what the book's for. But I am going to talk about the message and why I think the message is important for America's future. We live in the greatest country in the history of this planet. In less than 200 years, we forged the most prosperous and the most generous nation that has ever existed under God. As we grew in wealth, we shared our wealth. And the superpower that is the United States has benefited people all over the world. Americans are hard workers, fiercely independent, and unique in the world. That's not politically correct, is it? But really, political correctness is just a trick with those who have weak arguments to shame others into taking their side. And I am done falling for that. I am also not buying into the idea that America causes the world's problems and that we deserve to be murdered because we're arrogant or more prosperous than other nations. We aren't perfect, but we're as good or better than the world has ever known. It is our rule of government that allows us to prosper, to reap the rewards of our labor, and to prevent a ruling class from enslaving the citizens. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We were the first to attempt self-government, and that unleashed an energy and a creativity that is still rocking the societies of the world. But of late, we are faltering, and we are faltering badly. The idea of government by the people is falling away. Consider, in 2008, the polls showed the majority of Americans were against the bailouts of banks and bankrupt companies. But the bill passed Congress anyway. After that, the majority of Americans were against the Health Care Reform Act. But that passed Congress anyway. And the majority of Americans are against the expansion of government and deficits, but they continue to grow anyway. The concept of by the people and for the people is no longer heard. A recent Rasmussen poll found that only 17% of Americans believe that our government rules with the consent of the governed. 17%. Here, let me quote the Declaration of Independence. Quote, that to secure the rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Unquote. Our whole system is based on this concept, yet only 17% of us believe that it is happening. Let me put this another way. 83% of Americans do not believe that our representative government represents them. That's incredible. We have a representative government that represents almost no one. So the question became, who is this unrepresented majority? And where could I go to find this information to answer that question that I could trust? After all, the media is biased. They give the impression that everyone except Neanderthals is liberal. And they appear to be so isolated that they have no idea who the average American really is, who you are. I don't trust what the politicians say about Americans, because it's those very politicians that don't represent 83% of us. And I don't really trust academia, because many campuses, perhaps excluding Chattahoochee Tech, are training grounds for progressive liberalism. So I decided to go directly to the American people. That sounds pretty simple. If you want to know who's the American majority, ask the Americans. The polling companies Rasmussen, Gallup, Zogby, and Pew Research are constantly asking Americans where they stand on the issues, on values, and their political preferences. The voice of America is in that data. We Are the Majority quotes these polls, and it covers dozens of issues, and then it classifies each majority position as liberal or conservative. The book also includes a brief comparison of liberalism and conservatism to aid in the classification. When the totals are added up, the results might surprise you. Before I tell you the result, though, I want to assure you that the book does not try to explain the polling data or put any spin on the polls by interpreting them. The polls are the polls. The only way to find the true majority is to let the people speak without being distorted from what they say. Now, my personal preferences do occasionally come through, like when I quote the poll stating that the majority of Americans want energy independence and greater domestic energy production. And then I quote our president saying that he intends to bankrupt energy companies that use coal. But aside from my preferences, the facts speak for themselves. And the fact is, conservatives hold the majority viewpoint in America. Conservatives, we are the majority. You may not have heard this before, I know, but the facts are laid out in my book, and the conclusion is inescapable. In fact, it's not even close. Conservative values, beliefs, and ideals are shared by the majority of Americans. For years, you have been told you are not the majority, that the candidates you support must move to the center. In other words, become more liberal. That it's the independents that decide elections. And we have bought into this garbage. But guess what? According to a Gallup poll, 36% of all independents are conservative, and only 19% are liberal. The fact is, whoever the conservative majority unites behind will win a national election and many local elections. It's the unites part that is crucial. When we vote for who the media portrays as popular, when we compromise our values and ideals because we buy into the lie that only a moderate can win, we give up our right to be properly represented by our government. Conservative candidates do not need to compromise to be elected, if the majority will vote their values. If we do, then our government will once again become a government that represents the people, instead of a government where only 83% of us are not represented. We do not need to compromise our conservative values. We need to assert them. And we need to teach our young conservative that their vote counts. I know of a young patriot, an ex-military man who's now a policeman, who told his mother, "Why should I vote? My vote doesn't count." This man put his life on the line for us in the Middle East. But he believes our system is so broken that his vote doesn't matter. That's terrible. But unless the conservative majority votes their values, he's right. The conservative vote won't matter. But conservatives, you are the majority. The proof, the facts, are right here, and we are the majority. The Georgia primary is just a few days away. Please, vote your values. We Are the Majority will be on sale out in the hallway after the meeting. In addition to the polls, the book includes quotes from the Founding Fathers describing their vision of our government, and lists a few websites that evaluate the positions of the candidates and your representatives. It is a short book, easy to read, and the conclusion speaks for itself. I hope you will purchase a copy and tell your friends about its message. And you can send them to wearethemajority.net or amazon.com if they wish to purchase a copy and read the facts for themselves. Thank you for listening, and God bless America.